Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Who really won World War II? I'm not talking about on the battlefield. I'm talking about in the bank. For decades, we've heard stories of heroism and sacrifice, but let's look beyond the propaganda and follow the money. Who benefited the most economically from the deadliest conflict in human history? The answer might seem obvious, but the real story is full of surprising twists and long-term consequences that still shape our world today. Let's start with the undisputed #1 winner, the United States. While Europe and Asia were being torn apart, the US mainland remained untouched by the fighting. This was a massive advantage. Instead of rebuilding, America was building. It became the arsenal of democracy, but really, it became the world's factory. The US was churning out everything: weapons, tanks, planes, ships, food, steel, and oil. Every allied nation, from Britain to the Soviet Union, became dependent on American goods and, crucially, American credit. The economic numbers are staggering. American GDP almost doubled between 1940 and 1945. Think about that. The country's entire economic output doubled in just 5 years. The Great Depression, which had crippled the nation for a decade, vanished. Unemployment plummeted from a painful 14% to less than 2%. Factories that were once silent were now running 24/7. This wasn't just a temporary boost. It was a fundamental transformation of the American economy. By the end of the war, the United States held over half of the entire world as manufacturing capacity and 2/3 of the world as gold reserves. This immense economic power was then solidified through smart political moves. The Bretton Woods Conference in 1944 established the US dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, a status it still holds today. Institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank were created, with Washington at their center. Then came the Marshall Plan. On the surface, it was a generous aid package to rebuild war-torn Europe, but it was also a strategic masterstroke. It tied European economies directly to American markets, ensuring a long-term demand for US goods and preventing the spread of communism. American corporations, flush with cash and confidence, expanded across the globe. The verdict is clear: World War II launched the United States from a major power into the undisputed global economic superpower. Now for our silver medalist, and this one is a bit more complex: Western Europe. In the immediate aftermath of the war, places like Germany, France, and Britain were in ruins. Cities were flattened, economies were shattered, and millions were displaced. It looked like a total catastrophe, but from these ashes rose a modern economic powerhouse. How? A key factor was the Marshall Plan. The billions of dollars in American aid didn't just rebuild what was lost. It funded the creation of brand new, modern industries. Old, inefficient factories were replaced with state-of-the-art facilities. This forced modernization gave countries like West Germany a competitive edge they wouldn't have had otherwise. Take West Germany, for example. It went from total devastation to experiencing the Wirtschaftswunder, or economic miracle. By the 1950s, it was already becoming the industrial engine of Europe, known for its high-quality engineering and manufacturing. At the same time, the trauma of war led to the expansion of social welfare states, creating stability and a strong domestic consumer base. New forms of cooperation, which would eventually lead to the European Union, began to emerge, fostering trade and preventing future conflicts. So, for Western Europe, the short-term devastation was a painful but necessary catalyst for long-term modernization, integration, and incredible growth. Coming in at #3 is perhaps the most paradoxical winner of all: Japan. Japan was utterly defeated. Its cities were firebombed, two were hit with atomic bombs, and its empire was dismantled. Its economy was in a state of complete collapse. How could this possibly lead to an economic benefit? The answer lies in the unique nature of its defeat and occupation. The United States, leading the Allied occupation, effectively took control and rewrote Japan's entire political and economic system. The old, militaristic ruling class was removed. A new constitution was written, which included a famous clause that capped military spending. This was a crucial move. Instead of pouring money into a large army, Japan could direct its national budget towards industry, technology, and education. The US also saw a rebuilt Japan as a vital ally against communism in Asia, so it actively supported its economic recovery. With its focus squarely on commerce, Japan began its own economic miracle. The government and private industry worked together with incredible efficiency, investing heavily in research and development. By the 1960s and 70s, Made in Japan became a symbol of quality and innovation. The country became a world leader in automobiles and consumer electronics, with brands like Toyota and Sony conquering global markets. By the 1980s, Japan had risen from the ashes to become the second largest economy in the world. Its total defeat became a forced economic reset, turning a devastating loss into an unprecedented gain. So where does the other great victor of the war, the Soviet Union, fit into this picture? Their story is much more of a mixed bag. Geopolitically, the USSR was a huge winner. It crushed the Nazi war machine on the Eastern Front, expanded its territory, and established a sphere of influence over all of Eastern Europe, creating the Eastern Bloc. It emerged from the war as one of two global superpowers, a rival to the United States. But the economic cost was almost unimaginable. The Soviet Union suffered around 27 million deaths, the most of any nation by far. Much of its western territory was completely destroyed. While it did seize industrial assets from Germany as war reparations, its own centralized command economy was rigid and inefficient. It could produce tanks and rockets, but it struggled to produce consumer goods or innovate at the same pace as the West. So, while its political and military power grew immensely, its economic foundation remained comparatively weak. This internal contradiction would eventually contribute to its collapse decades later. The Soviet Union gained an empire but at a staggering human and economic price that ultimately proved unsustainable. Beyond nations, there is another major beneficiary we need to talk about: the military-industrial complex and the corporations within it. Before the war, large-scale, permanent defense spending was not the norm. World War II changed that forever. The sheer scale of the conflict required an unprecedented partnership between governments and private industry. Companies that produced weapons, vehicles, and supplies saw their profits skyrocket. Arms manufacturers, oil companies, construction firms, and logistics providers became essential to the war effort and were rewarded with massive government contracts. This created a powerful, new political and economic force. After the war, this system didn't just disappear. The Cold War ensured that defense budgets remained enormous. The government-corporate partnership in military technology became institutionalized. This meant a constant flow of public money into private hands, funding research and development that often had civilian applications too. The war normalized the idea of a permanent war economy, entrenching a powerful network of corporations deeply tied to state power and government spending. Finally, we should mention some of the smaller, but still significant, beneficiaries. Countries like Canada, Australia, and some nations in Latin America, particularly Brazil, saw their economies grow by supplying the major powers. They provided essential raw materials, food, and manufacturing support from a safe distance. While this spurred industrialization and brought in wealth, their growth was still largely dependent on the demands of the US and Britain. They experienced a moderate boost, but they didn't undergo the fundamental transformation seen in the United States or the radical reset seen in Japan and Germany. So, when we tally up the economic ledger of World War II, the United States stands alone at the top. It was the only major power to get rich from the war, transforming into the world's dominant economic force. But in the long run, the losers of the war, Germany and Japan, also became surprising winners, using their total defeat as a catalyst to rebuild into modern economic miracles. It's a powerful reminder that in history, the line between winning and losing is often far more blurry than we think. Thanks for watching. If you found this analysis interesting, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments which historical event you'd like me to analyze next. See you in the next video.